It's a pleasure to have you all here in our third webinar on the series Using Mobile Phone Data for Official Statistics. This webinar is promoted by UN Big Data Regional Hub in Brazil, with support of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean through the Knowledge Transmission Network of the Statistical Conference of the Americas. You can visit the Regional Hub webpage at hub.ibg.gov.br, where you can read about future webinars and workshops. Additionally, you may access the records of our activities if you missed any. And now it's time to talk about tourism statistics. Usually, tourism statistics relies on conventional data sources, such as surveys and administrative data, with each of them having their own strengths and limitations. But nowadays, countries need more detailed and timely information about people mobility. In this webinar, we will learn how national statistical offices are handling these challenges and producing tourism statistics using mobile phone data. Today, we have two guests, and they will speak about 20 minutes each. After that, we have 10 minutes for questions and answers. And please place your questions on the chat, and we'll bring them at the end of the speeches. Our first speaker is Mrs. Al-Fatifa Remy. She has been working with MPD since 2017, when the implementation of this new data source in Statistics Indonesia, where she works, was successful. Al-Fatifa, it's a pleasure to have you here, and please go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. But before I ask permission to turn off my camera, since my internet connection is not good. So while I'm presenting, I'm going to turn off my camera. Is that okay, Maria?
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Alpha. You can call me Alpha. I'm going to talk about Indonesian journey in using MPD, how Indonesian using MPD to enrich our tourism statistics. Right. Okay, we know that what's concerned from personal data is now like getting more important. When we started using MPD, the first thing we worked out was the legal basis for these activities. Of course, we need to ensure that no personal data is compromised, but we can also measure the quality of statistical training using the MPD. Statistics Indonesia is a government agency tasked with collecting data and is required to maintain the confidentiality of the data collected. The statistical law issued by the government is sufficient to serve as a basis for these activities. In addition, the data that we get from mobile operators is also encrypted, so we don't know whose number we are reviewing the data for. However, for research purpose, with the operator permission, we collect volunteers who express a willingness to have their data analyzed so we can verify the trips they have taken. As Maria mentioned, actually our research is started in 2016, but our first statistic were produced in 2017. Research on MPD has been carried out with the initial target of inbound tourism at the border. At that time, when we started working with MPD, we didn't have any knowledge about what is MPD. With the escort of the Global Working Group of Big Data and also with the help of Posisium, which is Sim already here, also helped us by carrying out a series of knowledge sharing. I was once of Sim student at the time. In 2018, MPD exploration continued to a broader scope. We are trying to measure local tourists in Indonesia. It involves data from approximately 130 million cellular phone subscribers. In calculating tourist statistics, it turns out that MPD can also be used for other use cases. And until now, the use of MPD is still a topic of ongoing research in Indonesia. We are trying to use all operators, and also in this year, we were trying to count domestic tourists within the city. The initial purpose of using MPD in Indonesia is for tourist statistics, where the definition of a tourist trip is a trip outside the usual environment. The basic concept used by Statistics Indonesia in its usual environment is the city when you live, where you live, and where do you do your daily activities. So the trips we calculate are trips between city, so from one city to another. We use AMDA algorithm to define our usual environment. If you are interested in learning about our algorithm, you can see in our paper here. I submit the link in this slide. Defining trips is also an important basic concept in using MPD. In one series of trips can consist of several visits. When this happens, what is recorded is the city that is the main destination. So we need to define the main destination of each trips. Travel time, actually travel time is a derived variable that is processed using MPD. Combined with distance, each visit record can be evaluated. Is it reasonable or not? In fact, the MPD variables are standard. We have transaction time, we have geographic coordinates, and also transaction type. This is then used as derived variable to explain human mobility. Pattern recognition, of course, needed to find out what anomalies might occur so that data cleaning can be done first. And our insight into the data will be even better because maybe the characteristic of your country will be different from Indonesia, so it will have different pattern. In this slide, you can see the MPD summary on the left, and on the right is the journey flow if mapped, if translated into map. You can try to determine which city is the main destination. Actually, this is one series of trip with many visits. You can try to exercise to find which city is the main destination from this slide. The next level, if you have managed to find patterns in the data, you can consider as tourist trips. Then you can try to disseminate the results. So whatever we do, the result, of course, the statistics itself. As a routines in producing statistics, the series of activities carried out to the data dissemination stage is data collection is the data collection itself, of course, and then you need to do quality checks of the input data, application of the algorithm to the data to obtain the desired statistics, review for the reasonable, whether the result is reasonable or not, and then if all the results are acceptable, you can publish the statistics. Before using MPD, we use a classic survey to ask about travel patterns. Surveys like this have the advantage of capturing travel patterns and also capturing tourist demographics, modes of transportation, and expenditure during trips. These three variables, the purpose of trip, demographic, expenditure, and modes of transportation, cannot obtain by using MPD. To complete the required statistics, a digital survey conducted from the travelers that we have known that they are making trip. This survey was conducted with the help of mobile operator because we don't have the access to customer data. The digital survey link is disseminated through SMS to customer numbers that known to be traveling. We ask for their purpose of trip, their demographic, their expenditure, and their modes of transportation. When we explain about MPD, we got a lot of questions, and most of them was, what about those who don't have cell phones? What about their data? What about their numbers? Of course, if they don't have or they don't use cell phone, there is no log of their trip. We cannot try to predict their trip. For this reason, the estimation of the total population is carried out by means of weighting. In our socioeconomic survey, household survey that we routinely conducted every semester, we asked about cell phone ownership and the number of SIM cards used by each household member. These results are used as a weight in estimating the population. So we ask about whether they are using or not using cell phone, they are owning cell phone, and the type and number of SIM card used. We use this combination to build weight to estimate the population. This table compares statistical calculation between classical survey and a combination of MPD and digital surveys. We did spend a significant investment to use MPD, but this cost compared to having to do a classical survey is not less than a half of the budget. Not to mention, using the same data, we can produce several other indicators. As you see from my roadmap, we have produced also commuter statistic, non-permanent mobility, point of interest analysis, event analysis, and a lot of more. By using MPD, we can present tourism statistics down to the city level. It's a matrix with a size of 514, whereas previously, before MPD with classical survey, it was only up to provincial level. So we have only a matrix with a size 34 matrix between province in Indonesia. We can also produce monthly statistics. Previously, it was yearly, but with MPD, we can also produce monthly statistics. So now our tourism statistic is become more richer. With the same algorithm, we can also calculate tourism statistic to specific destination tourist area. This from this figure is visit to super priority destination in Indonesia. This helps monitor the effectiveness of policy made by the government of Indonesia regarding the strategy for developing tourist area. Since 2020, if I was not mistaken, government of Indonesia have tourism area that we call it as super priority destination Indonesia, where this area is getting monitored by our government to increase the visit to this area. So that's we can tell about how Indonesia used the MPD for its tourism statistics. You can reach us at mpd@bps.go.id. And if you want to know how many person you need to perform this activity, actually my team is consists only with 4 people. I have Sinong as our data architect, and also Adit as our data engineer. We have Calvin and Apri as our data scientists. So if you don't need to start to think with a big team, start with small one and start to figure out your data to start to use MPD. And if you don't know how to do it, actually the UN have provided the handbook to use MPD, and also maybe just like us, you can ask assistance from the GWG or Positio. Thank you, Maria. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alpha. It's a very interesting presentation. Of course, we all need to know more about using MPD, but anyway, it's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
And now we have our second speaker. It's Mr. Sim Esco. He is working in business development imposition since 2014. And for close to 10 years, he has connected mobile network operators and government stakeholders for projects that provide useful data for decision makers. Sim has an international economics and business background from universities in Vienna and Copenhagen. He is a member of the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data in Data Science for Official Statistics. Please, Sim, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Alpha, for the thorough presentation. So, Alpha presented PPS Statistics Indonesia experience with mobile positioning data, and they're using it for different kinds of cases. And now I want to focus more on the international collaboration on this topic, and where you can find more resources that can help you in your journey if you choose to have a mobile positioning data project in your office, and also to let you know which other countries and how they are using this data for tourism statistics. I want to start with this one, but maybe it's not necessary. For those that do not know how the data is gathered, I still want to mention that when we use mobile phones, even when we are roaming, this data is being shared, or the data of your location by the cell tower level is being shared with a mobile operator who collects this data, and this data can be accessed and processed in these large databases. And this is the data set that could be turned into collective statistics on visitors and also residents who are having domestic tourism trips. Eurostat has done a lot of work in this area. Eurostat is the European Commission arm or department for statistical matters. And they have mapped out different big data sources as they are relevant for tourism statistics. And there are many different big data sources that could be relevant. From communication systems, from the World Wide Web, from transactional data generated by business processes, or sensors or crowdsourcing. All of these have some benefit to the tourism statistics field. And this is a very exciting area, and use of big data is very, very exciting for this time and day in tourism statistics. What is mostly noted in Eurostat work is that mobile network operator data or mobile positioning data is one of those data sources that stands out and could be part of the future area of tourism statistics among the different data sources. And the combination of these data sources will ultimately have the best result. So with that in mind, we also focus here on MPD for tourism statistics. Not only Eurostat, but other international organizations are currently working on cooperating and making sense of this world of big data being used for tourism statistics, and especially mobile phone data. There are initiatives at the UN Statistical Division, so the Global Working Group or the Committee of Experts on Big Data for Official Statistics and Data Science, in which we take part in, both me, Alpha, and Maria. There are also initiatives under the United Nations ESCAP, UNAC, and also OECD, UNWTO, International Telecommunication Union, and even the GSMA, which is an let's say an umbrella organization for mobile network operators. And also this umbrella organization is looking into how big data can be used for social good. So mobile network operators actually want to know how their data can be used for things like tourism statistics and official statistics in general. Eurostat has written, or for Eurostat, there has been this study done on the use of MPD for tourism statistics, and this was one of the first and most thorough studies to address the technical issues, the legal issues, quality-related issues around mobile network operator data. So all kinds of questions that you might have, these statisticians and together with with Positium and other researchers, we went ahead and made this manual so that others can use it to answer questions. And questions you might have could be, how do you allow access to this kind of data? How do you gain access from mobile network operators? What are the things that mobile network operators want to have, and what are the barriers that they see? Or what are the methodological issues? How do you link the concepts and definitions of mobile positioning data with those of tourism statistics as defined by Eurostat or UN World Tourism Organization, and how to assess the impact of any delineations of these concepts and definitions, and how to come up with solutions, methodological solutions to these issues. Because every issue in itself is an opportunity to do something about it. And then what is the quantitative correlation with traditional data sources, and some explanations why that might be the case. Also, there's another report in the same study outlining the opportunities, benefits, also the cost factors involved, and what are the new indicators that could be done with this data that is not possible from current statistical data sources. So that was in 2014, but I suggest that you still go and study this material if it's possible for you. Second is from this year, start of this year, there is a new methodological guide on the use of mobile phone data for tourism statistics, and this is by the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data for Official Statistics and Data Science. And hopefully Maria can share these slides or even the link after the webinar to allow you to access also this resource. And this again can be used as a reference or guidance material for countries that want to implement MPD, and it contains the different methodologies, including the experience of Indonesia, the quality assurance that must be in place, and case studies from Estonia and Indonesia. So I'm about 1/3 through of my presentation. And next, I want to tell you the different countries that use mobile positioning data. So I come from a company called Positium, which is specialized in using mobile data for especially government statistical and decision-making uses. And we have done work in Estonia, which is in the north of Europe, but also other countries around the world, actually on 4 different continents. And these are not all tourism statistic related projects, but these are also projects in population, in mobility, and ICT statistics, for example, in Brazil and Philippines. And many of these projects support the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really, really important to have that evidence base. However, we're not the only ones, and back in 2020, we had this COVID-19 pandemic. Back then, it was immediately apparent that use of mobile phone data could be used to track mobility and see if people are actually holding on to the mobility restrictions that were in place so that we don't spread COVID-19 disease. And this is a report from GSMA. So this is the umbrella organization of mobile network operators, which reports that so many countries have done one project or more regarding mobile phone data analytics to support the response towards COVID-19. And increasingly, this development is led by statistical offices and telecom regulating authorities in different countries of the world. Statistical offices have a very good basis, legal basis, and also the authoritative basis to make sure that data that is necessary for making better decisions is actually made available as it's needed. And now, when it comes to tourism statistics, there are two countries currently that I know that produce official statistics. So these are, so the MPD is a primary resource in statistical production. These are Estonia, Indonesia, and you can even find that in the UN World Tourism Organization the Statistics Compendium. These countries note that one of the data sources is from mobile network operators. However, there are more countries that rely on MPD to calibrate surveys or have a complementary source to surveys and other data sources, and these are Finland. Statistics Finland is working on mobile phone data. Austria, Statistics Austria is doing experimental projects that now translate into actually production of MPD for calibration purposes. Also Bank of Italy, the Statistical Office of Oman, in Spain, INE, the Statistical Office of Spain is working with all mobile phone operators to produce domestic tourism statistics. In Saudi Arabia, the Ministry of Tourism is also using this for a complementary source. And then there are more countries, more than I can actually list here, that use mobile phone data as non-official, or let's say more complementary resource for tourism. And these are Lithuania, the Travel Lithuania, or Germany, or Buenos Aires city in Argentina, and also the statistical offices of Uruguay and the Tourism Authority of Chile. So I'm sure there are many people in the world that you can actually turn to right now to ask for their experience, and there's not a lot that can distract, or the authoritative figures are there already. So maybe Alpha already mentioned how the data goes from being the operator stored data to tourism statistics. I want to mention that once tourism statistics are produced from this data source, they are very relevant to many different stakeholders. So National Statistical Office might use it for tourism statistics, but National Bank will have to see how the travel data can be used for balance of payment calculations, not only tourism, but other travel, and local tourism authorities to promote and measure the effectiveness of the promotional campaigns and develop the local tourism. Also cities and municipalities, because it's quite hard to understand how much tourism is actually trickling down to different locations. And because it's a big data source, then all of these stakeholders will be able to benefit from the granular data. So now the last part of my presentation, which is the benefits of mobile phone data. And I'm sure you agree that that compared to surveys, there is a lot of benefit from having a data source that is timely and current, and produces the data much faster, but also has a more wide-ranging breakdown of countries that are possible, because you're not able to gather all of the countries from the sample surveys. The sample size of mobile positioning data in Estonia is about 200 times compared to what is possible with the surveys, while being more cost efficient. And I think Alpa had a good slide about that. Then it already has a lot of benefits compared to surveys in terms of effectiveness, but you also get better geographical granularity from the results. For example, going down to destination level, as I said, to municipality level, and understanding where are the visitors going to within the country. And then understanding this information also on a daily level, for example. So really going to every destination and on a daily level to see what kind of visitors from which countries are visiting those places. And for example, if you have an event in the region, then you might understand the impact of that event to tourism. For example, this is one destination in Estonia where there's a seasonal tourism flows happening, and at some point at one time there's a very big international event that attracts a lot of tourism, and this shows up in these charts of tourism statistics. Very clear how this event is impacting the local municipality. But in a way, you could say that there are too many tourists for this small municipality. It's quite hard to compare mobile positioning data to existing data sources and find out whether what you're seeing from mobile network operator data is actually the truth. One way to find out is by looking at the specific place and specific time and compare some data that is available for that location. For example, in Oman, the National Center for Statistics and Information is running a census survey of tourism in one area in the one tourism area, and they have police stops on the road asking every single visitor that is coming in what is their purpose of visit and where do they come from. And so we can compare this place and this time to what the results we see from mobile positioning data. And you can see on a daily basis in 2018, day by day, the correlation is quite good from MPD and the survey. So the census of the tourists, and the correlation is actually 96.2% for this specific area. Once you have established correlation for a certain area and perhaps gather more data, you can then understand how to move forward with this data source for the entire country. And then calculate, for example, tourism flows, the flows of tourists from one place to another, and understand really how the tourists that are visiting one area act in a different way compared to tourists entering another area. For example, again, an example from Oman is we have German tourists who are visiting the northern areas and the southern areas. And you can see that although there are as many number of trips in both areas by German tourists, the northern areas are only visited by cruise ships. So there are almost no overnight stays in the area, and the tourists, they come and go during the same day. While in the very naturally rich Salalah areas, you have same number of trips as you have overnights every day. So there's a stable number of tourists who spend the night. So this is a more richer source of tourism for this country. And as Alpha already mentioned, or maybe not so specifically, Indonesia is one of the largest countries in the world, and they have been able to do a domestic tourism survey that normally takes thousands of different enumerators for conducting the survey across the country, going from household to household, to doing that with 8 and now even 4 data scientists who are working on MPD. So that's the kind of cost effectiveness that you're seeking, and Indonesia is actually using this data for their tourism satellite account, which is more impressive. So to summarize, I want to say that the future of tourism statistics, and this is not from me, this is from Eurostat Tourism Statistics discussion paper. The future is more geared towards using big data and administrative data sources for tourism statistics. And surveys will still have their place, but to fill those gaps that are not possible with big data. Hope you agree with this vision, and I'll be happy to discuss with you, any of you. If you want support from the international community or myself, please get in touch with me. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the presentation, Sim. It's very interesting. I didn't know that a lot of countries were working with MPD for tourism, even though not all the countries are using for official statistics, but they are using MPD anyway. Now we have some questions. I had a question for Alpha. Alpha, how did you convince mobile phone operators to contribute in this interesting project? What are the main characteristics of the legal agreement signed?
Okay, Maria. First, we have an MOU with solar operator. We ensure that this can and should be done by explaining our regulation that we have. We have the statistical law, we have the GDPR, the personal data restriction. And then second, of course, there is a cooperation scheme between BPS and cellular operators. We have contract to access their encrypted data within a certain period of time. This contract actually regulates the type of the data that we can access, the method used in accessing the data. We are using sandboxing. What processing will be carried out through the process, and also who will access the data and things like that, like specific with the case that we want to use. We want to use the data, and we renew the contract annually. Furthermore, we also continue to try to convince the government of Indonesia of the statistical potential that we can generate from MPD. This is necessary because we want government to support us and encourage other operators to work with us. So we not only we have data, but also we get aspects of the completeness of the data. If we manage to work with all the operators, so there is no issue about what about the operators beside the operators that we have cooperation with. So for the aspect, the completeness of the data, we always try to convince our government to support us.
Just a curiosity, how many operators you have in Indonesia?
Right now is 4, and we have managed to work with 3 of them.
Okay, thank you. Sim, we have a question for you. Is there any kind of incentives or payments involved in the developed projects?
Thank you, Maria. So the question is about incentives. How do you get incentives to the operators to be involved in the project?
Oh, it's not my question. It's from Aleja. Aleja, can you? Yes. She said yes.
Yes, there is mostly payment because since it is a big data source, then mobile operators also have a cost to store this data, and also the processing in most cases, not in all cases, takes place at the mobile network operator. So they also have the cost to have a good sandbox or a good processing system where this data can be processed. And a good good level data set is costly to gather. So there are some incentives to at least bear the cost of minimum cost of the mobile operators. In Eurostat, there is of course discussion going on to have pan-European some kind of standards on how to have access to mobile operator data to statistical offices and bear the minimum cost to the mobile operators. But I think the current way forward is to start first with a commercially viable project for mobile operators, unless you have a very good legal basis for getting all of the data in the statistical office. Sometimes that is possible. In the case of the Statistical Center of Information in Oman, the mobile operators data was actually collected in the government cloud, which is a secure environment to store even such sensitive data like mobile network operators data. And then the incentive was to comply with the legislation.
I think that this issue is it's an ongoing discussion everywhere, because I think that the problem to use mobile phone data is exactly the access to data, because mobile phone operators, of course, they don't want to give data for free. They want something. They want to be paid, or they want some advantage. But
Maria,
sometimes it's not possible.
Okay. Sometimes not possible, but I have to add that there are cases where mobile phone operators are interested in data monetization, and mostly their clients are not government institutions; they're private institutions. But statistical offices like BPS can teach mobile phone operators how to analyze their data and analyze it in a way to also check for statistical quality and validity and accuracy in a way that they have not thought about before. So it's actually giving back through these projects some skills, some capabilities to think about data in a statistical way. And this is something that statistical offices are uniquely capable of doing.
Yes, I see that there are many models to interact with mobile phone operators, but it's a hard discussion with them. It's not so easy to try to obtain data. In the case of Brazil, we have tried many times, and it's not so easy. And here we have 4 main operators, and some are more easy to talk to, but others, they even don't want to talk. They are not receptive. In some countries, the operators are in the government, so it's easier. Like I'm in Japan, the operator is from the government, if I'm not wrong. And in Uruguay, we have 1 operator from the government. We have others, but 1 of them are from the government. So the relationship is different.
And Alpha in Indonesia also, right?
Yes, the operator we're working for the first, it's the one that's owned by the government. Yeah, so it will, it's easier, but not that easy also to get the data.
Yeah, but when we have many operators and all of them are particular, are private, it's not so easy.
But the good things is after we succeed with the first operator, the second, the third is easier because we have the
Yes,
best practice.
I can imagine, because we have an example of the relationship, and
Yes.
the other operator can see the benefits of this relationship.
Yeah, even if we previously come to the operator one by one, the fourth operator right now is approaching us. Not we come to them, but they come to us to do you want to have a collaboration with us? Oh yeah, okay. I will think about it later.
Oh, yes, good. I have a question for you. What is the frequency of your statistics, tourism statistics? Once a year, twice a year? What is the frequency?
For the foreign statistic, we produce it monthly, but for
Okay.
domestic, right now is yearly, but we produce it monthly statistic, but we publish it yearly.
Okay.
But for this year, we hope that we can publish it monthly for this year. Yes.
Yes, it's very frequent. Once a month, it's a lot of statistics produced.
Yes.
Same in Indonesia and Lithuania. We produce monthly, and the central bank publishes the statistics quarterly, because that is the way they have always done it. But they get the data, they receive it every month by the 15th.
But you said that Lithuania is not official statistics.
Yes, it's with the tourism board.
Okay.
Actually, Lithuania is
it's not from the official national.
It's not official at the moment, but Lithuania is an interesting example. Their statistical office just became a data agency, from statistical office to data agency. So they are now the organization that is capable of handling all kinds of data, including administrative and big data. And their law now states that they are able to process and gather also mobile positioning data from mobile network operators. So if you have a change in the legislation, then of course it's possible to write in the new possibilities and the new data sources.
Yes, it's another point, the change of legislation. We have in Brazil, we have to change the legislation because mobile phone operators, they said that they cannot give us data because privacy, the confidentiality of data. Of course, we are statistics agents, but they said that there are questions related to privacy of the consumers. So it's a legal point we have to deal. I think that in
yes.
Europe,
mobile network operators, they do not want any risk associated with the project.
Yeah.
So yes,
incentives
they can
are one
lose
thing.
their consumers. Yes.
Yes. So we have to take away the risk. Sometimes that is through legislation, and sometimes that is through proper authorization by the Data Protection Agency. Sometimes it's through cryptographic or let's say technical means. So where you do the processing, inside mobile operators in a very secure way. That is not any way harmful to privacy, or even have in place some encryption so that you don't even see the data that you're working on. So there are organizational, legal, and technical measures. So there's a menu of measures you can take. So once you find the correct menu items for your country that allow you to do the project, then I believe there is no country in the world where this data cannot be used for tourism statistics.
Yes, of course, and not only for tourism, for any other types of statistics. Of course, we have to make the best arrangements. If the data could be processed in the side of the operator or in the side of the statistics office, or even in a third party side. In the case of many operators acting in the country, maybe a third party is the best choice. Yeah. Anyone has more questions? People is very shy here. No questions, so you can. Oh,
I would be interested if there's anybody from any country that already has a tourism statistics project, maybe from Chile or Argentina.
Yeah. We'll have 2 questions here. Have you encountered negative opinions from society due to perception of misuse of data?
For Indonesia case, yes, they keep asking about whether BPS misuse the data for any other purpose than tracking the data. So we explained that we don't even know whose number it is. You don't have to be worried. And also our Ministry of Communication also asking how BPS process the data, how we keep the privacy of the data. So we need to explain the details, the data that we use, and make them sure that we don't deal with the consumer data. We also deal with the mobility data.
Sim, can you give an example of the volume of the information you can get in a country daily? A small country, Estonia.
Small country.
A small country like Estonia, maybe you have the numbers of Estonia in your head.
Actually, in Estonia, the data volume is small, only in some terabytes. But since you are all in South America, you are in the southern hemisphere. The biggest data set in the southern hemisphere is in Indonesia.
Yes. Yeah, when we produce our domestic tourism in 2018, the 130 million subscriber, and the data is more or less 30 billion rows. 30 billion rows of data. So yeah, it's quite huge.
Yes, because the population of Indonesia is very big.
And we are quite active with our when we are using mobile phone. So the data is a lot of data.
And there's another question: how do you handle with bias of MPT? Yes, of course, we had a lot of bias. We have more fun than persons. Of course, it's one bias, and we have a bias considering that children don't use phone and the elderly don't use. I think that we don't handle this bias. We have to accept that data has a kind of bias.
But we do, Maria. Actually, we built the weight for estimate the population. We built the weight based on our socioeconomic survey. We ask our citizen how they use their phone. Do they have phone? Do they use it? Do they use it when they are traveling? How many SIM cards that they are bringing? And something like that. We use it to do weighting to our data.
Yeah. You have an auxiliary survey to answer these questions, and so you correct the bias of the MPD. But what about the kids, children and elderly using data, you don't correct this type of bias?
No. No with the demographic. But actually, this year we are trying to research if we can find the pattern of group mobility. So if some people traveling together, can we find the similarity of their data? We are trying to find it, but we haven't found any conclusion yet. But since we start the research in this early of 2023, so we hope we have a good result from there.
There are many sorts of bias. Maybe they're included in three broad groups. One is the bias from the data itself, which is something you have to clean. So there are errors in the data that you have to take into account and to counter. For example, wrong locations and too much data that is not actually from people, so machine-to-machine communication, and there are others. And then there are those biases that are more about measuring the additional measuring the statistics and measuring the definitions that you're trying to go for, which is tourism, and filtering out all of those that are not tourism. For example, transits and regular movements. Then there's that kind of bias which you talked about, Maria, which is people not using mobile phones, like kids or even tourists who are coming to the country and they are not roaming or even buying a local SIM card. They're not even using their mobile phone, which is not frequent. But in the border of Indonesia, it happens a lot.
Yes.
And for that kind of bias, you cannot do anything inside the data. You have to extrapolate up from the data to the total population, and you can only do that with additional surveys or using other additional sources like immigration data, accommodation data, and other types of data sources that are available.
Yes, you have to use auxiliary data to try to correct this bias, mainly demographic bias. A last question. What technology to use to process big data? Maybe Apache Spark? I don't know what you're using.
Okay, for Statistics Indonesia, we do different kind of technology with different operators because we don't want it to become their burden, so they can use their technology that they have as long as they give us access. They give us the right to access it. But with one of the operator, they use Hadoop, so we use Apache Spark. But with another operator, we use Google collaboration. We use Google collaboration, so we work with Google collaboration. And the third one is very funny. They don't give us access to their data, but they did all the scripting, all the algorithm in front of us, so they let us see them do the tasks, and we guide them what to do. It's different. All the three operators, we have different strategy for each operator.
Thanks, Alpha. You use a lot of technologies also.
Yes, sometimes you have to take into account what the operator is using, how they have set up their sandbox. Sometimes you can make your own demands, and sometimes the data set is smaller. For example, for roaming data, it is smaller, so maybe you can use even PostgreSQL, but for other data sets, you have to use some combination of Spark or Python to process the data. And of course, for statistical purposes, maybe you're used to R, and you can have intermediate databases which you can then start to work with. And at some point, the databases you will be able to process it for statistical purposes with R, for example, and generate nice dashboards and analysis.
Oh, we have a last question. It's the last one. I don't think it's not possible, but Guillermo is asking if MPD can be used to estimate the degree of urbanization or to differentiate urban-rural environment. I had never heard about this use of MPD.
Yes, well,
yeah.
if there's something that could be done with MPD, then Indonesia is doing it. So
yeah, we are
I think
using
this is
MPD for
MSA.
commuting and migration. So we don't tell it exactly to explain urbanization, but by doing commuter and migration, we can get the analytics to there. Yeah, we calculate the migration and commuting.
And you use that for delineating the metropolitan statistical areas, right?
Yes. And also
So,
for I see the question from the Anna. Yes, remember Sim, when we do the ICT indicators, we are trying to estimate the coverage of internet and also how many the percentage of population who use internet. We use MPD for that to explain ICT indicators.
Yes, thank you, you two, for the presentations, for the good discussion.
and Maria, Anna had a question about using MPD for population, and I think this is a good opportunity for you to advertise the next webinar.
Yes, the next webinar on March will be on population statistics. So we have, I'm not sure, but we have 4 or 5 next webinars, 1 for months. So we have about disasters, and we have about population, and we have about transport, and we also discuss about data access, the models of data access. We have a lot of discussions here. So, but the next one will be about population. Okay, you will be informed about the dates and the speakers. Okay, thank you everyone for being here with us. I appreciate it too much. Thank you. See you next month. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
If you still have questions, you can write to me or Alfan.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Please, you have the emails on the presentation, so you can write direct to them.
Okay. Okay. See you next month, Maria. See you next month, Sim. I hope we can meet again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.